It's the second race day here at the Portland International Raceway in Oregon, America. Round 13 of the championship provided us with a bit more questions and answers. Nick Cassidy throwing it away at the penultimate corner. Mitch Evans crossing line in first but losing out to Costa getting the race win. Now we come here, the last ever race at Portland before we move over to Miami. Let's cross over to Tom Brooks in commentary, ready to go for free practice 3.
There as well, it was 81% humidity, even though there's only a 1% chance of rain.
Yeah.
So it looks like it's going to burn through, but at this moment in time, it's not necessarily, I would say, too representative of the conditions we're going to have for the rest of the day.
Yeah, there was a bit of rain actually last night in downtown Portland. We all went out for dinner to a lovely Thai restaurant actually, and it rained actually as we ended up, getting back into the taxi on the way home. So yeah, it's a shame that it didn't come through the race, because I would love a proper wet Formula E race. We haven't had one since London last year, and that was a wet dry race because it's indoors outdoors.
It feels like Formula E is carnage at times enough. If we have a wet race, I don't know what's going to happen, Tom.
Well, we'll see if that becomes a possibility in London, perhaps in a fortnight's time. Given the British weather system, there's a greater possibility of that than there is here, let's say, for example. Anyway, Envision, Robin Freight, great job from him yesterday. Back onto the podium for the first time since Diriyah in February. Given the fact that that team has been in the doldrums, only 8th in the team's championship, Alan, I think he'll be pretty pleased with that result. But he actually seemed a little bit disappointed in the post-race interview yesterday.
Yeah. He should have been happy, because it was definitely the biggest result of the season so far, and also for Robin as well, who's obviously looking to try to have the last 3 races of this particular season in the position that normally he's expected to be in, which is always in the top 6. Last year he was strong. The team actually won the team's title overall, and Nick Cassidy was fighting for the driver's title.
Yeah.
So ultimately, we know that Envision can get the job done, but it's just been a pretty lackluster season for a multitude of reasons. Not just because, they've had incidents, they've had reliability issues, and ultimately they haven't quite maximised the performance of the car at all times.
And Freight's not only fighting for strong results here, but he's possibly fighting for a drive for next year, as we understand as well.
Yeah, he's not confirmed to be with a team for next season yet, so performances like what he managed to produce yesterday will certainly put him in better stead when it comes to the negotiations with other teams out there.
Yeah, this man here, Nick Cassidy, was in Envision colours last year, narrowly missed out on the driver's title, but helped the team secure the team's title in London last year, along with Sebastian Buemi. And Cassidy, disappointed yesterday, but he's a tough cookie. He knows how to refocus. That's what racing drivers are particularly brilliant at, and just putting it all behind them. He needs a strong result here this afternoon to try and just bounce back from a difficult Saturday.
Yeah, in the last 6 races before yesterday, he had the lowest position of 4th. And so he'd done a fantastic job, and he was looking like he was going to add his 3rd victory of the season to it. It was just there in his hand. And so, yes, there's disappointment, because it's a driver's mistake, and he knows it was his mistake. He knew that he could have exited yesterday's race with a 50-point lead, and that would have effectively secured everything. All he needed to do was run around today, and he could have been champion. But ultimately, that wasn't the case. But nobody really grabbed the ball and were in a position to actually draw him down on that, because Evans had the 5-second penalty, and we also saw that Verline wasn't really, for whatever reason, in the mix. He had some technical issues, and so therefore, I think actually Cassidy should have been pretty happy, because he kind of got away with it.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, digesting what happened yesterday and Nick Cassidy having that mistake. In other moments of the season where Pascal Wehrlein's been more consistent and in the sharp end of the pecking order, it could have been a day where there was that real swing in the championship.
So there's a bit of an issue with our TV pictures at the moment. We apologise for that, just getting it set up. Wi-Fi has been so unpredictable the last 24 hours. It should come back on shortly as well. It should be fine. But anyway, at the moment then, we've got De Vries, Buemi, Cassidy, Evans in there too. Back to the action.
And so from that perspective, it is a bit difficult because I think in some ways the stewards are kind of damned if they do and damned if they don't, actually. Is that politically correct enough?
I think that works. Why not?
Is it?
Yeah, we'll go for that one.
Give us a second. Still trying. It's having a paddy with us. Internet signal has not been the greatest over the past 24 hours as we try and load back in. Doesn't seem to want to work with us at the moment, which is always worrying news. John, one of these days I'd actually like to do the podium for Formula One. It's been a while. Canada didn't work out the way we wanted it to, so maybe just once a podium. Now, because the Fire Stick's now completely gone, which means that we've got no commentary, and I've got to take over quite a lot. So, at the moment then, we have for the Portland D Prix. Who's on top? De Vries still top from Buemi in second position at the moment, so no much changes going on there. Adding Cassidy, Evans, Frines as in the top 5 positions as well. So, yeah, it's just slowly building up to what it needs to be as well. So, fingers crossed. No one's having too big of a problem out there as well. The 2 curbs keep costing a lot of issues out there. Okay, so yeah, we've had again, it's all gone wrong, which is fantastic news when you're trying to actually get a commentary. If one thing doesn't work, the other doesn't work either. It's one of those days. So we've got free practice 3 coming up. Then we've got qualifying at 5:25. Sessions. Well, actually, we're on here as well. 5:30 starts at 5:40 for their running orders as well. So it looks like it's all just sort of crashed. Oh, hang on. It's come back to us. There we go. We're back with action.
That was actually the part of the lap where he was struggling, particularly compared to his teammate Rich Evans, or about 0.2 of a second in that section of the lap he was missing. So that's obviously playing on his mind. He knows that he was strong yesterday in the race, no matter where he was starting from. But he wants to be in the mix today. He wants to make it through to the duels. You can tell that in his voice that he knows there's maybe a bit more performance and qualifying trim to come.
Yeah, and also very clearly he wants to be able to sort of put all the thoughts of yesterday behind him. And the best way to do that is to be right up at the sharp end, even although we know that, you know, the grid position isn't critical for the race result around here. However, saying that, I think there's a, you know that, you know, there's a mental battle that you need to just sort of put it all away from you, which the best way is pole position.
Rebuilds a bit of confidence as well.
Well, here is Jean-Eric Vergne, 3rd podium of the season for him yesterday. At the sharp end of the field, just looking at it with 90 minutes to go, you've got the 2 Abs Cupras with Nico Müller leading this man here, Lucas de Grassi, who's currently just dropped down to 3rd quickest. Running a little bit deep here at the first corner, clattering over the curbs. Saw that quite a few times in the race yesterday. And also, actually, in qualifying in the duels, it was a litany of mistakes, really, which allowed a lot of other drivers to progress forwards.
It's a high-speed circuit, Tom, and it does feel like it's risk and reward in qualifying. You need to be pushing to the limit. Because it's a short lap, there's fine margins between the drivers, but the bumpy braking into 10-11 caught a lot of drivers out yesterday. Just there's one part of the circuit to watch out for. It's going to be intriguing.
Costa's on a hot one here, isn't he? He's absolutely flying out there. You saw the commitment there through turns 10 and 11. What's the time going to be as he comes over the line here? Because we're into the 108s. As he comes to the checkered flag, it's going to be into the the high 108s, actually 108.817. So that's very, very quick at this early stage of the day so far. See the commitment there over those curbs. No real imbalance on the car at all. Wasn't snapping away at him from the rear like we've seen from some other drivers.
Just nice through there. Very, very nice. You know, Antonio Felix da Costa's won more races than anyone else. And here we've got one of the Maseratis going very slowly. He's been off at turn 1.
It's Rublev by the looks of things. Down at the first corner.
I'm intrigued by how the tyres are holding on. Just looking at Da Costa, he's gone purple in Sector 1 again, following the fastest lap he just set. So they seem to be able to get, on this short lap, more than one fast lap out of them.
Yeah, we should actually try and look to see whether he just went out and push, or whether he had a build, push, and then he's on a second push. Because with it being such a short lap, the reality is that you've got to work pretty hard to get the tyre temperature. And also, it's quite cool today. So you're right, the tyres are hanging on a lot better than they did even yesterday.
Apologies, by the way, it was actually Max Günther in the Maserati that went off at that first corner. You can see Jake Dennis really unhappy with the balance of his car in qualifying. We heard him on team radio, frustrated, talking to the team, saying the car's just dreadful in terms of its balance. He wasn't able to get what he needed to out of it. He comes across the timing line, goes up to third quickest. Cassidy looking like he's on an absolute flyer here at the moment as well. Speaking of Jaguar, let's go down to Saunders for the first time here and catch up with team principal for Jaguar TCS Racing, James Barclay. Of course, a victory cruelly denied with that penalty for Mitch Evans. And of course, we saw Nick Cassidy spinning out of contention for the victory as well. So I wonder what James makes of a challenging race for the outfit.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, James Barclay, obviously yesterday not ideal for either driver, but now you've had some time to think about it, to sleep on it. First of all, reflections, and where are things standing as they are now?
Yeah, so maybe I'll start with the reflections. And I think, yeah, listen, clearly a disappointing result in the end, but on the grand scale of it, we were on for a double podium in an immensely tense race where a lot of strategy came into play. So, you know, the team, the drivers, just executing brilliantly. That last bit, though, obviously fell away for us. And, you know, Nick drove 25 brilliant laps, so I really feel for him. He really was so close to a phenomenal win. And honestly, I mean, listening to Alan's comments earlier, I think he's absolutely right today. I think it's hard one to judge. The consistency of the penalty, though, you know, is tough to take. I don't think it was deserved of winning a race, losing a race win, but yeah, and that's something we are still looking at. So, a lot of positives. It didn't end the way we wanted it, though, and the bit today is now just putting our eyes forward and focusing on that. We can't change yesterday now, and as a group, our priority is to execute today really, really well and put yesterday behind us, and that's going to be the plan today, and try and repeat what was a very strong race up until that last phase.
So in terms of any appealing, what does that process look like now?
So the actual decision is not appealable, but there's a right to review process, and that allows us to present new evidence, which we believe we have, and that's something which we've put to the stewards, and we wait to see what the outcome is. But at the end of the day, they have a really tough job. Alan said it, you know, it's this type of racing is not normal. It's it doesn't, the usual rules don't always apply, right? You have to hold your lane, you have to keep your lanes, and our view is that, yeah, Mitch had a right to have a lane. Jake had rejoined from attack mode, and Mitch, we felt, was right to be left some room in a corner that you can run side by side. So, but that's our perspective. The stewards, ultimately, we have to respect their final decision, whatever that may be.
I got to experience Mitch's frustration myself, as I'm sure you did. How is his mood coming into today?
Yeah, well, winning races at a World Championship level don't come easy, so it's absolutely natural for him to be very frustrated. But yeah, he's an athlete. He's a high-performance human being, and he's coming in today focused on today, right? That's his goal, and he wants to come and, you know, put the wrongs of yesterday to right today, and he's motivated to do that.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Thank you, James. Thank you to Saunders. Alan, from one team principal to another, what do you make of the assessment there?
Well, I think the two key points that James mentioned there was actually yesterday we can't do anything about it, so we're looking at today. So it's basically it's history. The other one is the right of review, which is you can't appeal a decision that's done in the race like that. It's like a drive-through penalty. Once it's done, it's done. But the right of review does give them the ability to look at it, and I would suggest it's probably not necessarily going to change anything of yesterday, but what it will do is it'll allow them maybe to get a better structure for how they're going to do this for the future, because it's an evolving process. You know, the way the racing has gone in the last 12 months since we were here in Portland has changed a lot, and we're, you know, nobody wants an incident. Jake Hughes, I don't think, was aware of the tap in reality, and so there is a point where you become into a racing incident situation, but it's got to be put on the table and it's got to be discussed. But from today's perspective, it is history. It's yesterday.
Alan, I was sure you were going to say that one of your key points was going to be that he was spot on to say you got it correct.
No, but I've already been down and bought him a coffee, so it's all right. But, you know, it is a super tough one, because it's, as James said, it's not easy to win these races. It's definitely not easy to be in a position where you've got both of your cars on the podium, and with such a performance they've had in the season so far. And that's, I think, what is frustrating. However, it's a lot easier to come back from it when you know you've got the potential to do it again today, unlike if it was a situation where you are not able to repeat it, and then your one opportunity is gone.
Just looking here at Kyle Collette running off at the first corner, replacing the ill Oliver Rowland here this weekend. You can see him there, just no harm at all, off onto the paint and then back onto the circuit.
I was just going to touch on the fact that we saw Kyle Collette, the amount of white paint that seemed to come onto his tyres when he went into that runoff zone. Obviously, could be a bit of
it overnight.
It looks
I think it's been repainted overnight, because when they were running on it yesterday, then there wasn't any of the sort of white paint.
Yeah, it looked like they were picking up quite a lot there. Just looking at Kyle Collette as well, his lap time, only a couple hundredths away from his teammate Sasha Finisher, currently sat in fourth. Alan, what do you make of his performance this weekend so far, Chloe? Because he's come in without being on the simulator, without having the same preparation as everyone else, and he seems to have taken to this championship fairly well.
Yes, he has. He's driven the car a little bit because he's been their reserve driver. However, in reality, he has kind of been dropped into the deep end of the pool, as we say, and he's, I think, done a very good job. Yesterday, he was pretty quick in qualifying, I think strong, showed the performance and the potential and the pace. In the race, their energy management was the difficult part, and that's something that I've seen every driver coming in. It's the energy management in the race, it's not the driving the 1 or 2 laps.
Stoffel Van Dorn here. I wondered if he was going to run off onto the grass, but just clattered over the curve and got a nice jolt up the back.
You can audibly hear the noise there. That did not sound like it was too friendly for the car as we listen now.
Oof. Yeah. Straight off to the chiropractor after that one, I think. Not nice at all for Stoffel Van Dorn. Another driver who, by the sounds of things, looks like he's going to be in different colours next year. He's not nailed on for DS Penske. Well, as I understand it, I think he might have a contract. But contracts are, you know, if the driver's not happy, he doesn't want to be there, maybe he wants to move on to pastures new, there's a possibility that he could be in Envision colours, we understand it, for 2025. So who knows how that's going to go. I'm sure as we head into London, it will become a little bit clearer.
Jake Hughes there having a little bit of a wobble coming out of the first chicane, kicking up a bit of dust. He's obviously top of the time sheet so far, making use of that McLaren car and really putting it exactly where it needs to be in order to find the best lap time. He was someone obviously that was involved in the incident with Mitch Evans, but also Sam Bird, his teammate, was the biggest mover in the race yesterday. He had just a strong day for McLaren. It seems like, you know, in qualifying trim, Jake has got the ability to extract the maximum out of it, and Sam showed that their race pace is there too.
I just got a bit of dirt on the tyres, exit turn 3. All good.
Yeah, copy, we saw it.
Yeah, we're on television there, chap. All saw it.
Bit of rallycross style there for Jake Hughes. He's really been able to get the maximum out of this car, specifically in qualifying, but also latterly now in the race as well. That first podium was eluding him. It was always going to be coming, wasn't it? Finally at Shanghai, he managed to break his duck, and now he looks like he's on good form.
He is definitely on good form. But he's a quick driver. There's no reason not to be quick. Another quick driver looks like he's just going to pop in a lap time, as we saw a replay of that, is Mitch Evans.
Yeah, Evans looking pretty handy. Also, Eddie Mortara up in 4th place, just behind Dan Ticktum in the ERT, as we have another look at that moment. Evans has just gone to the top of the timesheets there with a 108.659. That's one of the fastest laps, if not the fastest lap we've seen all weekend.
It's the fastest lap by 1,000th of a second, I believe. So he's just, you know, chipping away slowly but surely at lap time there.
And here we have Mr. Statman in the studio, 1,000 of a second. Very impressed.
So looking here at Mitch Evans, just on a cool-down lap then now after going to the top of the timesheets. That's his race engineer, Joseph Rocker, on the right-hand side of your screen. Faces a picture yesterday after Evans picked up that penalty, wasn't he? Very disappointed with that, but a chance to bounce back here this afternoon. Just under 8 minutes left of free practice 3 then here in Portland ahead of the E-Prix for round 14 this afternoon. JQ is currently second quickest, front row for him yesterday. The results, though, weren't translated in the race following that contact he had with Mitch Evans. We've heard James Barclay's side of it. Let's get down to Saunders and catch up with team principal for McLaren, Ian James.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, Ian, let's talk about yesterday because, well, first of all, JQ's pace, qualifying and then doing well in the race. He's on another level in these last few races.
Yeah, I think that he's always been a strong qualifier, and we've seen this really throughout last season into this season as well. So great that he was able to get the car on the front row yesterday. It's looking pretty good today in FP3 as well, so the pace is still there. And I think Shanghai for him was a real turning point where actually he was able to consolidate that strong qualifying position into good race performance as well. Such a shame yesterday that we weren't able to obviously capitalise on that performance again.
Now, can I get your thoughts on that moment yesterday? Because, you know, ultimately it ended Jake's race, but there's a kind of a bit of a consensus that it didn't seem that the most clear-cut of racing incidents to deserve the penalty. What's your thoughts?
I think all of these racing incidents, and they are racing incidents at the end of the day, I don't think there was anything malicious at all about that particular situation. So it's just very unfortunate, of course, when it ends a race and what could have been a very, very strong race for Jake as well. There was nothing that Jake did wrong in that particular situation, so he was very much a passenger. So a great shame for him on a day that could have been very different.
So now looking ahead to today, what's on the cards? Because as you said, we've seen the pace and we know that the energy efficiency is there. One lap less today. How might that play into things or make things more challenging, perhaps?
I think that qualifying, it's going to put a little bit more onus on that. So I think what everybody's going to be doing is looking to really try to get into the duels and get a strong qualifying position to start the race from. I think we'll see the inflection point of the race, at the point where we really start to see things open up, come a little bit sooner. But otherwise, it's going to be the same sort of excitement, same sort of chaos that we saw yesterday, and then, of course, last year here in Portland. So looking forward to it.
Good to hear. Thanks, Ian.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Saunders. Thanks to Ian James there as well. Just saw Mitch Evans just running off in the final sector a few moments ago. Here you can see him down at turns 11 and 12. This is quite similar, actually, to what happened to Nick Cassidy, if you remember yesterday. Chucks a load of grass back onto the circuit.
It's also what happened to Mitch Evans yesterday in practice as well. He did exactly the same as this. The only difference is that he missed the curb when he re-entered the circuit, which he hit pretty hard yesterday, and they had to check the underneath of the car.
Yeah, I was going to say, if that's the way to do it. If you do have to go off there, Alan, you want to manage to avoid that curb when you rejoin the circuit, because that's what causes the damage to the cars.
Yeah, this red and white curb that he's coming up to now, if you hit that because of the angles of it, then it lifts the car up into the air, and he had three wheels in the air yesterday in full rally spec. But just pushing the limits again, it's the area of the circuit where you can definitely gain a bit of time at the end of the lap. Now it's definitely a risk and reward, though.
So this is Antonio Felix da Costa a couple of corners later, just running off down at T1 and T2, comes back onto the track. Mitch Evans is right behind him at this point as well. Evans wasn't on the push lap, so it's not too much of a concern. But we've seen a few drivers going off onto the runoff area there. Slippery surface flag we've got now down at turn 10, courtesy of the grass that Evans chucked onto the circuit, as you can just see on the left here.
You may have noticed we've got a surface flag there at turn 11. We're going to leave that up for the remainder of the session.
Well, good to know there from Scott Elkins, race director. Sounds like he's half asleep this morning. Sounds like he's quite woken up. I mean, it is early here, isn't it?
Don't blame him. Just looking at the protagonists we've got who are showing speed today. Normally with Formula E doubleheaders, it feels like you have a complete turnaround in form from one day to the next. But Mitch Evans got pole yesterday. He's fastest. Jake Hughes started on the front row. He's second. Antonio Felix da Costa made it into the duels. He's showing speed again. Dan Ticktum is up there 2 and 5th. It does feel like the similar drivers, the speed's translating from day 1 to day 2 here in Portland.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
I have no grip, man. On this set, I have really low grip. Really, really low grip, especially rear axle.
However, despite being third quickest, da Costa not quite happy with his setup on the car. That's Nick Cassidy in the other Jaguar, running off down at T1 and T2 as well.
So a lot of people going off at T1 and T2. We saw T10 yesterday a lot of times. But T1 and T2, there was the odd one. But now it looks like it's pretty consistent as they're coming into the last minutes of the session.
Just looking at the lap times between the two Jaguars, as we've seen a couple of them run off. Mitch Evans is top, 4/10 quicker than his teammate Nick Cassidy. That's a big margin currently.
And also only 7/10 between 20 drivers out on circuit as well. So it wasn't A case of, it wasn't a case of locking up and just exploring the limits there for
Just drove through.
Cassidy. Yeah. Like he's heading down to McDonald's or something like that.
It's an intriguing one, isn't it, Alan?
Not really sure if you're meant to be doing that.
Yeah.
It's not intentional. It's an intentional missing the chicane.
So Friends can give a little bit of dust in the Envision there as well as he came through.
Do you wonder if they're exploring that in case they have to venture down there during the race later on? We think that it might have been painted overnight. I wonder whether they're just checking it out for those sorts of reasons.
Yeah, but I think you would normally then brake heavily into it to see your time loss and also then accelerate hard out of it to see how the tyres were going into turn 4, if that was the object of the exercise. It's more than likely to try and get a gap, I would think.
Well, on board here now with Cassidy, he's on a full 350 kilowatts of power, runs slightly wide. This is a problem though, look at the traffic just up ahead as he makes his way through this series of corners. As he just manages to get past, all okay. But we did see this a little bit in the group stages of qualifying. In particular, Scott Elkins was coming on to the radio during the free practice session yesterday saying, you've got to pick your moment and create your gap before you come through that final sector, because it bottlenecks up and it tightens up so much relative to the rest of the circuit. You don't want to be caught cruising on the racing line and get done for impeding.
He's actually improved his own personal times. He's not the fastest overall in either sector so far. Now to the fast chicane. Puts it through quite nicely there, I think. Oh, the rear moved out a little bit just as he started to turn in, which meant that he had to open up the steering. Not quite spotting the apex as much as he would want. Yeah, does put him second.
Nicely done for Nick Cassidy as he comes across the timing line then. Just 4/100ths of a second, so it's a Jaguar 1-2 towards the end of FP3.
Yeah, James Barkley's going to be fairly happy with that result so far. If they could replicate that in qualifying in the race, he'd be a very happy man.
Just want to give a shout out to Kaio Collette as well in the Nissan. Jumped into that car, no experience at Portland here, no time to jump into the simulator as well, because it was a really late call for Oliver Rowland. We now jump on board with the Brazilian driver. Don't think he's done himself a disservice at all. Out-qualified Sasha Fenestra's teammate yesterday. Didn't quite work out in the race. Ended up finishing down in 18th position behind Dan Tickton. But nonetheless, I think he's done himself absolutely no harm at all here this weekend.
Yeah, and he's looking pretty smooth out there, just on board with him as we go through these long apex corners in the first sector. Car looks fairly settled, maybe a little bit of understeer dialed into that car, Alan, but it's not really moving around too much at the rear under him, is it?
No, but if we remember when we were on board with Nick Cassidy in the Jaguar, it was definitely a little bit more on the edge. It was a bit more dancing around underneath him, and ultimately I think that's the right way. You need a car set up for this style of racing.
Interesting you say that, Nick Cassidy. We just heard on team radio as the checker flag comes out, he was saying that the tyres weren't up to the right operating window despite going second quickest, so he's still able to extract the maximum of the performance out of the car, even when it's not perhaps in the right conditions.
Oh, and wide there for Collette as he tried to throw it into the final corner. But I'm sure that's just going to make everybody else on the grid super happy that they've heard Nick Cassidy has now got a little bit more in the pocket.
So the session comes to a conclusion then. Nick Cassidy will go no better than second fastest. Nobody else really lighting up the timing screens at the end of free practice 3, but a great third session of the weekend for Jaguar TCS Racing. Mitch Evans quickest and Nick Cassidy just behind him by a very, very small margin. Jake Hughes also third fastest in the Neon McLaren. No harm for him there at all. Jake Dennis down there in 15th place. It's not been a particularly brilliant weekend for the reigning world champion. His hopes in the title race now over, I'm afraid to say, relatively speaking, as the rest of the field comes across the timing line. Of course, they'll be going through to do practice starts at the end of this session as well. So coming across the timing line there for the Jaguar. That's Nick Cassidy just getting ready to pop himself into a grid slot. Interestingly, he's going to go over to the dirty side of the grid here, Billy, instead of the cleaner side.
Maybe he's just keeping to his position he finished in practice there, Tom. He was second on the grid. That's where he's lining up just now.
We will be able to go one better than that in qualifying. You know, to get those 3 points, as we know, which is very important later on this morning.
What we used to do was to actually have one driver do one side one day and one the other, and then they would switch over, so that you got definitely both sides of the grid, the grip levels of it, to be able to prepare your software. But at the same time as well, we would kind of have a feeling at the end of practice where we were, and you would line up roughly in that sort of position.
When you talk about software, what do you mean by that? What sort of parameters are you able to change if you're starting on the dirty side compared to the clean side of the grid?
Yeah, well, it's how much grip the circuit's got at the end of the day, and then you can alter a little bit. Well, there's two things. It's the driver's feel for one, but it's also matching everything on the software for the delivery of the power.
To make sure that the wheels aren't spinning too much as you pull away.
You do need a little bit of wheel spin to actually have the maximum forward acceleration, just like you need a little bit of slip on the rear. So the rear wheels aren't always following the front when you go around the corner. It's about 8 degrees or something minimal like that. But yes, this is not a key to the race, without a doubt, but it's still something that everybody wants to practice and make sure it's right.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see there the 5 red lights then coming on and pulling away from the lights is the Envision. Let's have a look here at Nick Cassidy. This is in the race yesterday. This is where his race all came undone. 25 laps. He was leading the way. 1 lap from home, and he sent it off to the scenery.
He won't want to see this around any TV screens around the circuit. This is a moment he won't want to relive. It'll be something that he's trying to forget about going into today.
Yeah, it's such an unfortunate mistake there, and obviously the field was so close together at this point. That really compounded it. Had we had a more spread out field, he may not have dropped down to 18th.
No, but we also didn't have any safety cars or anything yesterday. It was a clean race all the way through, apart from a couple of small incidents in reality. So it was a very, very good race in that respect. And unfortunately for him, it was the one mistake that put him out. This is his teammate this morning, Mitch Evans.
Yeah, just running off, bringing a load of grass onto the circuit.
Yeah, drivers will be very thankful for that one.
Points for execution, though, for Mitch Evans. He managed to gather it up quite nicely and didn't suffer the same clonk that we saw from Stoffel Van Dorn a few minutes before.
It's a really, really tricky corner in these cars because the rear of the car is moving up and down as you're coming into the braking, and then as soon as you turn in, there's an undulation in the circuit as well, which looks to be destabilising everybody.
Well, thank you to Alan McNish as well. So that's the end then of the Portland E-Prix third practice session. Qualifying coming underway at 5:30. We're on here on the JBMotorsports channel. Remember, we'll be simulcasting on the Grid Network because they're trackside Joe and Nicole. But it's Mitch Evans who ended the race yesterday with the victory, but then getting that penalty, giving it back to DaCosta. Cassidy spun off the track. He has fought back to second, so it's 1-2 for Jaguar, but in a very crucial race that could give them both the team's championship. The Drivers' Championship mathematically could be given one hand to Cassidy at the end of today, but that is going down to London in the end of July. We'll be back at 5:30 then for all of the action for the Portland E-Prix qualifying.